Welcome into the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. It is March. I have heard the rumors, and I can't confirm it is true. It is March. We are here for part one of our conference tournament previews. Between these next 2 weeks, we're going through all 31 of them. RIP the Pac-12. It used to be 32, but we are going through all 31 of them. We're going to half of these conferences, we probably have zero idea what's going on in them. We're going to get very out there probably in the predictions. It is what it is. Joining myself, Nick Burt, today, of course, is Justin Walsh, Matt Merrifield, Jay DeCoster not with us today. He will be back next week. It is a true shame he's not here. He probably would have enjoyed just the chaos that this episode probably will be, but Jay Walsh, we'll start with you before we obviously get into all these tournaments. How are you doing today? Obviously, it's been a few weeks since we last convened.
It has, life goes on, but I'm glad to be back here on the greatest show on the planet, talking hoops with the boys. So let's get into it.
Hey, I completely agree, Matt. Obviously, it is spring break for you, your last spring break ever. Are you really taking in just the feelings of it?
Yeah, I am absolutely loving my spring break in the sunny and always warm Macomb, Michigan, as I believe everybody and their mother is currently in Cabo that I know, as far as I know. Even though when I went into Odyssey today, my boss asked me about the Michigan State students that had their stuff stolen at Cabo, and I go, what? So I guess that's a whole thing, but I go, that could literally be anybody, considering that everybody is there that I know right now. So, but I'm glad to be back. It is glorious to be here and to talk mid-major conference tournaments. This is what keeps me alive these next 2 weeks, even as allergies start to get bad, as I probably sound congested right now. But it's conference tournaments are what keep me going. Shout out the Big South, because that's the conference tournament I truly enjoy the most, which starts tomorrow, and I cannot wait. Keep in mind, Nick, you did not use it in the introduction, but I did finish, top 15, top 10 nationally in the Jerome last year.
I honestly believe you finished top 3. I think you finished 3rd.
Wow.
Nationally.
I need to go back and find the results from last year, because I had no idea what it was until you and another friend of the program told me about it. And then I proceeded to finish 3rd. He had no idea what it was. I mean, I followed mid-major conference basketball, but that is the true test of how much of a basketball degenerate you are. So, but I'm not off to a great start this year, which we'll get into in 3 tournaments in. So more to come.
Yes, of course. The Jerome, it's an online tournament that is basically you just pick the winners of the conference tournaments. It's fun. It's Google Forms. It's not like there's any actual difficulty with it. I did it again this year, at least the first half of it. Second half hasn't come out yet, but half of these, I think I just went random on it and hey, I'm taking a flyer on whoever it is. It's fun time. So, without further ado, because I'm expecting this to just be long-winded. Let's just get straight into the tournaments. The way at least I structured it, I structured the list by when the conference tournament final will be. So that means we start off with the Ohio Valley. They are one of a few conferences that do the ladder system that you often see in bowling mostly, where your 1 and 2 seeds start off in the semifinals, and then it goes farther on back. Your 1 and 2 seeds in the OVC this year are Southeast Missouri State and SIU Edwardsville. SIU Edwardsville has never made the NCAA tournament. This could be a never been to the tournament team crossing their name off that list. Jay Walsh, go to you first. Kind of what are your thoughts for the OVC this year?
So a lot of my thought is just with this format. I hate this format for conference tournaments. I'm really not a fan of just automatically putting the top 2 seeds in the semifinals. I think it basically just completely makes lower seeds completely irrelevant. And I get that the regular season has to matter, but at the same time, we want to give people a chance. So I am going with Southeast Missouri State just simply because, I mean, in this kind of format, the top 2 seeds win nearly every time. So it's hard to pick against one of the top 2 seeds. Southeast Missouri State did have a 10-game winning streak going into the final game of the season before they had kind of a throwaway game against Eastern Illinois. They kind of shit the bed, but they were winners of 10 straight before then. They're a very deep team. They have 9 players averaging over 10 minutes per game. I am, as you will see in my later picks for different conferences, I am very much a fan of deep teams this time of year. So I'm going with Southeast Missouri State.
Matt, go to you next. Your thoughts on the OVC?
Well, I just my one comment to Jay Walsh is I agree that not having teams be able to skip out until the semifinals is a form of cowardice. However, in this scenario, I don't mind it. Now, when we get to the Sun Belt and the WCC, where a team is required to win like 9 games in a week, I think that's a little excessive. But an 18 conference, a 2-round bye is not the end of the world. But I think there is a line, and it's somewhere in the middle, especially for these mid-majors that need to make sure their best team gets there, so that way they win in the tournament potentially and then get themselves some money. In this conference, I am actually rolling with the Little Rock Trojans as that 4 seed. I think that this top of this conference is kind of back and forth. Little Rock has beaten Southeast Missouri. They actually split the season series, and the road team won both times, which I think is interesting. Little Rock's the best defensive team in this conference. They're a top 100 defensive team in KenPom in the nation. They are also 321st in offense. So they're just going to drag you in the mud, but that's about all I know about this Little Rock team. But on the other side, I know they're more of an established team that's won in this conference. Obviously, everybody remembers when Chris Beard, 10 years ago, got them and beat Purdue. Southeast Missouri State's Edwardsville just are more younger programs. I know Missouri State's made it a couple times, but I think Little Rock is the 4 seed. They were strong. I think that definitely the top 4 teams in this conference are kind of all in the mix for it.
So, Matt, do you remember what conference Little Rock was actually in when they beat Purdue?
Within the Sun Belt.
They were in the Sun Belt at that point. So I kind of forgot about that. They got kicked out of the Sun Belt because they wanted to be a more like full conference. I think Texas Arlington also was there at one point too.
You might be correct.
Yeah.
Shout out to WAC for dying.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm not sure to get to that, but
overall, for me with this, I want to go with Edwardsville just because obviously the idea of a team making the tournament for the first time, it's always a good story, even when they end up getting, blown out by 50 in the first round to a 1 seed. I'm going with Southeast Missouri though, because it's most likely going to be them and Edwardsville in the final. The 2 scores of those games this year were 83-68, which was a Southeast Missouri win, and it was another blowout. It was a 80-64 win for Southeast Missouri. It's hard to beat a team 3 times, but I mean, when you have blowouts like that, you kind of gotta lean towards that team taking it for a 3rd time. So that's at least what I'm going with. I don't think I did that in the Jerome, but sometimes when you're filling out the Jerome on a flight to Boston and the internet's not great and you're just quickly looking at standings to see where teams are ranked, you make some mistakes. And I can admit I probably made one there, but we learn from them. Let's move on to the Big South. It's a 9-team tournament, which means basically 1 through 7 seeds are already on to the quarterfinals. Your opening round game is an 8-9 game. Your top seeds in this Big South is High Point as the 1, UNC Asheville as the 2. You have Winthrop as the 3 and Radford as the 4. Matt, we'll start with you. Since you said this is your favorite tournament out of all of them, at least mid-major wise, give us your thoughts on the Big South.
I think this year it's unfortunately going to be High Point. It's not particularly close. This is a High Point team that's top 100 in the Ken Palm, and depending on what matchup they get, is going to be they're going to be a 13 seed that beats. Like if they play Kentucky, I'll probably end up taking High Point to win a game in this tournament. They're a very strong team. They should have made the tournament last year, and they fell up short. I don't think they come up short this year. They are heads and shoulders better than everybody else in the Big South. I do love this conference tournament, and I just can't wait because it's at a site. I that's the one thing I appreciate about the Big South and some of the other mid majors, where they, even though they don't sell out the gym, they still find somewhere to play it for the entire weekend, and it's glorious and it's great because it should be, neutral site basketball. I would like to clarify, Nick, I finished tied for 11th. Technically 12th because of the tiebreaker in the Jerome last year. I was the top finishing Michigan State fan, and I was also ahead of T3 bracketology, slightly ahead of him, picking 16 correct conference champions of the 32. So, just saying.
Well, I mean, we'll still run with you finished in third place because that just sounds better. But Jay Walsh, we'll go to you next. Your thoughts on the Big South this year. Is this High Points tournament to run away with?
Yeah, I would definitely say it is. I mean, they've just been red hot. I mean, 11-game win streak, and they've been blowing people away in that win streak. I mean, they have an average of nearly 15 points per game win margin across those 11 games. So, like, they've had a couple close ones, but for the most part, they are really just taking care of business. The thing I really like about this team is across that 11-game win streak that they're currently riding, they have 5 different leading scorers. So, I mean, going back to what I said before, I am a big fan of deep teams this time of year, and having 5 different leading scorers across an 11-game win streak means that you are incredibly deep. You have a lot of very high-quality players. You can get the job done in a number of ways. I think High Point runs through this tournament.
And I'm going to third that. This is High Point's tournament to lose. I mean, their offensive rating in the Ken Palm sits at 26 in the nation. I mean, their defensive rating isn't that great, but it's still, I believe it's the second best in the Big South. That's going to go a long way. The only thing I would probably be worried about if I were them was probably be Winthrop. I know they have I believe they're top 5 in adjusted tempo in the Ken Palm. Obviously, that can throw some things off in games like that, but this feels like High Point's tournament to lose. Matt mentioned last year, it felt like it was their tournament to lose, and then I believe they lost to Longwood, who ended up making the tournament. High Point ended up CBI, I believe, lost in the final to the Seattle Redhawks. Shout out the Redhawks. We'll probably talk about them next week when we get to the WAC tournament. But let's move on from the Big South, and we're going to head to the A-Sun. As of recording, this is one of few tournaments that have started, so I will just go off of what we have remaining. In the semifinals on Thursday, you have Lipscomb against Queens and North Alabama against Jacksonville. Jay Walsh, will start with you. Obviously, this tournament's already started. Are there any big shocks so far in this one, or did you kind of expect it to go this way?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did. The main things that I'm looking at are, I think the top 2 teams in this conference are kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. I am going with North Alabama to win this conference tournament. And honestly, it's not even necessarily that I love North Alabama. It's just that Lipscomb has a lot of red flags for me. If you look back at their conference losses this season, first of all, Lipscomb is a team that likes to shoot a lot of threes, which that means they could beat just about anybody, but on any given night, they could lose if they have an off shooting night. And just about every time they have an off shooting night, they lose. All of their conference losses, they've shot, I believe, sub 30% from the 3-point line. They shoot 28, I believe, per game. So they are definitely just chucking them up. And that kind of 3-point shooting is just really unsustainable in tournament formats. So I don't love Lipscomb here. And another reason why I don't love Lipscomb is they really are not very deep. They have 6 to 7 guys that they play meaningful minutes at this point in the season, and that's it. And I mean, we've seen in the past, obviously, conference tournaments are a little bit different, but when you get into like March Madness, teams that run 6 to 7 guys don't traditionally tend to do great. The deeper teams usually tend to do a little bit better just because of the wear and tear. And North Alabama is a little bit deeper. They play about 7 to 8 guys. So I feel good about North Alabama winning this one. Lipscomb has the best player, Jacob Ognasevic. I hope I pronounced that correctly. ASUN Player of the Year. He's a very good player, but I just feel like the depth and the reliance on threes is going to cost Lipscomb. So I'm going with North Alabama.
Matt, I already know your answer because your Jerome pick lost last night, but your thoughts on the ASUN?
Yes, my pick was Florida Gulf Coast. Shout out Pat Chambers. Hello, Breslin. Do you have any thoughts on the Atlantic Sun Conference? It is the destination conference. Anyways, but anywho, yes, they lost to Queens. Not great. Go away. And you know what? I was actually kind of impressed by that Queens team. And the more I looked into them as I was watching Florida Gulf Coast lose, I like Queens a lot. I think they're going to be like a 10.5 point underdog according to Ken Pound tomorrow. I would probably take Queens to cover that because I don't love Lipscomb. I like North Alabama. I actually like Jacksonville too. I was really torn picking this conference simply because I think while Lipscomb is the top 100 Ken Pom team, North Alabama's right there. They've never been to the tournament. I think Jacksonville is really good. I thought Florida Gulf Coast was good. I guess Queens is also a pretty solid basketball team too. But from here on out, I guess I'm going to go North Alabama. But I would not be surprised if any of the 4 teams remaining wins. This is an entertaining mid-major conference that people should be tuned into on Thursday and Sunday when the title game is.
I kind of was doing the same bit of research last night. I had the Florida Gulf Coast game on. I was looking into this Queens team because obviously they will be playing Lipscomb on Thursday. They split the season series with Lipscomb, and they won the game, their away game, Queens did. So, and I looked back at the game that they played at the beginning of February. That was at Queens. Lipscomb, I believe, had a lead at halftime, and then it kind of just fell apart at the end. Queens can give them a really good run tomorrow night. Or I don't know what day it is. I think it's actually Thursday night. I keep saying tomorrow. I'm thinking we're recording on a Wednesday. It's Tuesday. Still, I don't think Queens wins the tournament, though. I honestly like this Jacksonville team. I really like this Jacksonville team. I know this North Alabama team, they've kind of turned it on late on in the season, but I was impressed by what I saw from this Jacksonville team last night. Adversity, they were down at half to, I believe it was Eastern Kentucky. They found a way to come back, and they won pretty convincingly too, and I like that. So I'm going to take Jacksonville here, even though I think I'm changing what my actual Jerome pick was, but it is what it is. We'll move on. Oh, Matt, yes.
Oh, I just had 2 things to add. That Jacksonville team played relatively close with Florida early in the year. They also beat Virginia Tech. They beat Virginia Tech by 10 on the road. So, I mean, they are a pretty solid basketball team. And then the other thing is there's a player in Queens who's shooting 25% from the free throw line. And I thought, and he went to the line late in the game. And I swear it was the equivalent to just taking the ball and throwing it like a fastball straight at the backboard. That was the equivalent to his jump shot or to his free throw for him. So I'm not quite sure how that hasn't been addressed. But, hey, I respect it. But let's move on.
Yeah. We'll move on. It's Arch Madness, which is, of course, very enjoyable for everybody. I think it feels like it's always like the biggest mid-major tournament because they get that like CBS, spotlight on Sunday, which is a complaint I had with Matt on, I don't know what day it was. I think it was last Sunday. The Missouri Valley is always the noon game on CBS. And then Michigan State is always their home game on senior day on that Sunday. It's either a 2 or 4 p.m. tip. It's very annoying to me that Michigan State, Michigan is the noon tip on Sunday. And then it's the Missouri Valley title. And then it's the Big Ten women's title. It is what it is. Missouri Valley should always be first. That's my big complaint. But let's get into the actual tournament here. Drake, they kind of feel like the runaway favorite here. They've had an incredible season, even after losing so many players last year with the coach DeVries moving to West Virginia. Ben McCollum comes in and just basically picks up where they left off. And they went 27-3 this year. I believe they are currently ranked 60th in the KenPom. But you also have Bradley there. You have Northern Iowa, and you have Belmont, of course, a former OVC team. It always felt like they were running the OVC for years. Matt, we'll start with you here. Your thoughts on Arch Madness?
I'm going Drake, and they're 27-3. They just lull you to sleep. They're the best offensive and defensive team in their conference. I know Bradley did beat them a couple weeks ago at home. But this team is just on another level. I think the team that could give them the biggest test is Northern Iowa. I watched a little bit of those two teams play, I think 3 weeks ago. And Northern Iowa gave a game that went to overtime. I don't know where Northern Iowa's university is, but it was at Northern Iowa. But in non-conference play, Drake beat Miami, who was terrible, I'm aware. They beat FAU. They beat Vanderbilt. They beat Vanderbilt convincingly on a neutral floor. I'm not quite sure where that game was played, but they beat them 11. They beat Kansas State in a semi-away game. So, I mean, this is a team that's beaten power conference teams, even with all the turnover they've had. They play extremely slow, but they're super efficient. They shoot the ball decently well. I mean, I'm not sure where I see them stacking up in March because their basketball is very unique. But in terms of dominating their conference, I think they're going to have no issue. And so, yeah, give me the Drake Bulldogs. I know it's the chalk pick, but I think there's some good teams. I think Bradley and Northern Iowa, that semifinal game is going to be a lot of fun, but I don't think either one are going to be able to take down Drake.
Jay Walsh, will go to you next. This Drake team has played in 5 overtime games this year, have won all 5 of them, including 2 of their last 3 games have been in overtime. Are they still your pick to win this conference tournament, or do you think somebody else is going to play them close, potentially go to overtime and take them down?
I do think that Drake is going to go down in this conference tournament. I am taking the Bradley Braves to be our first major bid stealer of the season because I do believe Drake still makes it in as an at-large, or at least they should. But I think Bradley gets the bid steal here. They have won 6 of their last 7 games, so they are very hot coming in, including a win over Drake on the road. They're an incredibly deep team, 10 players averaging over 10 minutes a game, 4 players averaging, rounding up 10 points per game. This is the kind of team that I love in March, and I feel like it's not necessarily, I don't know. I don't obviously dislike Drake because obviously they're a great team. I think they get in as an at-large in the tournament, and they should. I just think that Bradley, I could definitely see Bradley getting the bid steal here because, like I said, they beat Drake on the road, so they're definitely capable of hanging around in these games, like you said. And I think, like you said, winning in overtime, that's not necessarily super sustainable. So I think if it gets to a close game, I could definitely see Bradley pulling it out.
And Jay Welsh, you mentioned with Drake, if they do lose in this tournament, it feels like they should be in. Obviously, the arguments come up about Indiana State last year. They should have maybe been in the tournament when they lost the Missouri Valley. This Drake team and that Indiana State team, 2 very different teams. Drake has the resume to make it in as an at-large. Indiana State did not last year. This Drake team has a much better resume. I still believe they end up winning this tournament. If they don't, I do think it would be Bradley stealing the bid if it were to be anybody. This Drake team plays such a unique style of basketball. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, their adjusted tempo on KenPom is 364, which is the bottom of D1 college basketball. It's a very unique style of basketball. You got to play to your best if you are going up against this Drake team, because they have basically taken down anybody they've played this year. So I still like Drake to win here and advance on to the tournament. Let's move on to the summit. Or Matt, did you have something?
Oh, I just want to say that from what I was looking into in terms of previous teams in tempo, I think Virginia, Houston, like once, and Drake are the only teams as of in like the last 10 years to have a tempo below 60, which is just hilariously slow. So just for reference of how slow Drake is, they're Virginia at its slowest. But anyhow, continue. Let's move on. I'm excited for the Summit League.
Yes, we are moving on to the Summit League. And we got some new faces here that could potentially make their first ever tournament as your 1 and 2 seeds. Nebraska, Omaha, they are your 1 seed. They have become one of the stories of college basketball this year, mostly because of their post-win we lost Jay Walsh, but I'll just keep rambling on here. Hopefully Jay Walsh comes back soon. But Nebraska, Omaha, their celebrations at the end of wins, they beat up trash cans. It became a whole thing. It ended up with their, I believe their chancellor ended up popping out of a trash can after they won the regular season title. That's become their thing. You got St. Thomas in there, the team that moved up from D3, I think 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember the exact time frame there, but they have had a quick rise both in basketball and hockey. That's obviously something me and Matt could get into, but here we are anyways. Jay Walsh, you have returned. Let's start with you for the Summit League. Your thoughts?
I'm going with Omaha. Not a huge bit of analysis here. Obviously, I'm rooting for Omaha for the revenge on Frankie Fiddler for leaving them, but in a real sense, they lost a 20-point per game scorer in Frankie Fiddler, and they picked up a 19-point per game scorer in Markel Sutton. He has been fantastic this year. 20 plus in 11 of his last 13 games. So, I mean, he has really just been kind of putting the team on his back down the stretch. They're not a great rebounding team, so I don't necessarily love the pick because I am a fan of teams that are dominant on the boards this time of year, but certain players can carry a team. And I think at least in the conference tournament, Markel Sutton is one of those players. I'm going with Omaha. I think he's going to put on big time performance in this tournament. I could see him averaging like 25 plus a game in this tournament. I think he's just going to go off.
Matt, we'll go to you next. Your thoughts with the Summit League?
I think this is a conference that has the top 4 teams. I think all very much could win it. I think Omaha, obviously winning the regular season title. St. Thomas is a good option. I believe St. Thomas is not eligible for the NCAA tournament yet because I think this is their 3rd year at D1. So if they were to win it, Omaha would go to the NCAA tournament.
Omaha would have to be in the title game, I believe.
Oh, is it? I know some conferences it goes to whoever wins the regular season title, but if it's whoever's in the title game, that makes sense too. North Dakota State, South Dakota State are two, they're the perennial powers, I guess, in this conference that typically are in this position. I am going with South Dakota State. Part of my reason why I picked them for the Jerome is simply because you get bonus points for picking a team that isn't in the top 2. And I think this team's going to win it anyways, simply because they are actually the highest rated team in KenPom of the conference, even though it's kind of a tight race at the top. I know North Dakota State's really good, and Omaha's also right there. But in their non-conference, South Dakota State played McNeese and won in the season opener. They lost close to Northern Colorado, who might win their conference. They lost by 1 on a neutral floor to Boise, who's going to be an at-large bid potentially. Nevada, they lost close to on the road. Colorado, they lost close on the road. Bama, Bama dropped 105, but they also put 82 up on Bama. So a relatively competitive game against a number one overall seed. And then in conference play, I believe they split with everybody at the top. So this team rebounds well. They shoot the ball well. This is a coach that's done this before. They lost Zeke Mayo to Kansas, and they're still a really good team. So I really like the Jackrabbits here to come out as the 3 seed. And I think they probably end up I think they beat North Dakota State in the title game.
I will say I think St. Thomas wins this tournament. Obviously, that means they aren't going to the tournament. So that would really depend on who they face in the final. And honestly, I think it would be Omaha. They are just one of those stories this year. Obviously, Jay Walsh mentioned it. The loss of Frankie Fiddler to the portal obviously went to Michigan State. But this team, I mean, they've had a great year this year. And I think they'll end up in the tournament, whether that be them losing to St. Thomas in the final or whether that be them winning the title. I think we do see Omaha in the tournament come this 2 weeks. I'm, again, losing track of time. We'll move on to the SoCon. This is honestly and Jay Walsh gone again. It is what it is. We'll figure it out. Connection issues, it's sometimes a problem, but SoCon basketball, honestly, like I was saying, this is probably this is up there as one of my favorites. It's kind of just the teams that are in it, I guess. It feels more interesting. So Matt, as we bring Jay Walsh back in again, Matt, what are your thoughts on the SoCon?
I am going to go with a repeat champion this year. I think Samford wins it all. Obviously, I got to see them play in person when they played Michigan State, and I really like this basketball team. I was a big fan of them last year. I thought I had them beating Kansas, and they should have beat Kansas. But let bygones be bygones. But they come back. They were competitive against Michigan State on the road. They play a very unique style of basketball. They played Arizona. I mean, they got trounced by the Wildcats, but still, they give them a lot of credit for that. And they kind of struggled and underperformed in conference play, but they lost a couple close games. They lost by 5 at home to East Tennessee. They lost again close to East Tennessee. Furman was a tight game, UNC Greensboro, but they beat Chattanooga on the road. And then they lost. I mean, they did lose at home, but I still think this is a really good basketball team. They shoot the ball really, really well, and their defense is actually better this year than it was last year. And I just think this year they're a really strong team. I think they're built to kind of win games in March. They play super fast. I do like Chattanooga a lot at the top of the conference. I like UNC Greensboro a lot. There's a lot of good teams. I think the top 3 are kind of in their own echelon. I think those are the real teams that are threats to win the conference. And I guess I'm a little biased just because I'd like to see it. I'd like to see as many mid-majors that Michigan State played make the tournament. I think last year was one of those years where State played a lot of teams that ended up making their tournament. I guess I could go back and find the number, but I know Michigan State scheduled some tough non-conference teams this year in the mid-major levels, and I think Samford was really one of them.
Jay Walsh, will go to you next. Your thoughts here on the SoCon.
For the SoCon, I'm going with UNC Greensboro. I really like this team. They're best defensive team in the conference. They hold opponents to 40% shooting from the floor, 31% from 3. They stifle other teams. They're a really deep team, which, I mean, I feel like a broken record at this point, but I am very much a fan. They have 9 guys averaging 11-plus minutes a game on the season. So this is a team that, in this style of format, where in a tournament format where it's just kind of go, they are built to last. The thing that I like most about this team, however, is they're a great 3-point shooting team. They have 5 guys averaging over 40% from the 3-point line, but they don't rely on it a ton. Whereas, like I said, with Lipscomb earlier, I didn't necessarily love that they shot so many threes. UNC Greensboro is very capable of making them, but that's not their offense. Is not just, we're going to chuck up threes all game. So I really like UNC Greensboro. I think I think they are a potential team that could provide a pretty big upset in the first round after they make the tournament. But in order to get there, I think they get through the SoCon tournament.
Chattanooga coming into this tournament are on a 11-game win streak. That is one of the longest in the country right now. It's that wins that I think there are at least 3 teams in this conference that could, go on and win a game in the NCAA tournament. Chattanooga's one, UNC Greensboro is the other, and the third is Samford. I agree with Matt on that one. I like the way they play. I think I'm going to go with the chalk pick here, Chattanooga. They played some really close games this year. If you look in the non-conference, they played St. Mary's close. They got blown out by USC. They had a lead against Indiana at Assembly Hall at one point. I know Indiana's not the greatest thing to, brag about, but it's still something. I like where this team is going. It feels like they've kind of found their groove these past few games. I like Chattanooga in this situation. We're moving on. Both of you hate this. I love this. I love this. This is incredible. The Stairway to 7, the Sun Belt Conference. God, this is just so beautiful. I have no words for how incredible this is. Jay Walsh, I'm just going to start with you because you are shaking your head about how awful this format is. But the Stairway to 7 may be the greatest thing ever invented if Southern Miss, who won tonight against Coastal Carolina, go on and win this tournament. 7 games in 7 days. Come on.
I will say, if Southern Miss wins the Sun Belt tournament, it will be the greatest stretch of basketball that has ever been played. But this is a disgusting abomination of a tournament format, especially for a conference that had 4 teams tie for the conference championship this year. So you're basically screwing over 2 of those teams to put them in the quarterfinals instead of the semifinals. I hate everything about this. In terms of picking this conference, I really don't know because it's so tightly contested. We had the 4-way tie for the regular season championship. We have, I believe it's Marshall is 1 game behind Appalachian State, not too far behind them. Because of the ridiculous format, I feel like I have to pick between South Alabama and James Madison. And for those who have been following the show for a while, James Madison is near and dear to my heart. So I will go with the Dukes in this one. But I can't stand this. This is just disgusting. With how tightly contested this conference was all year, this should be a beautiful tournament to look at. And instead we get just an absolute monstrosity.
Matt, I'll let you wax poetically about how much you hate this tournament format also.
It's just a disservice, I guess, to what this conference tournament could be. But in all honesty, this conference is a coin flip, to be honest with you. I went with South Alabama, which I guess probably wasn't the best selection because they're the top seed in the tournament, which actually I didn't know that when I made the pick, because I wouldn't have picked, this is the one conference you probably should have gone with a 3 or 4 seed. So, but once again, I had to kind of rush. I made my picks at 5:00 on Sunday. They were due at 6. This is a really slow team, methodical team, plays a lot of good defense, the best defensive team in the conference. That's kind of my reasoning for it. They did all right in non-conference, but they didn't really play anybody. They played just an absolute dogfight with TCU. I guess that's their most notable game. But man, their defense showed up at a couple times this year. They beat the crap out of James Madison at home. They did get swept by Louisiana Monroe, which I think is surprising. But overall, I think they have wins against every of the top teams in the conference, so they know they can beat them. And defense wins championships. So in a conference where it comes down to a coin flip, and I don't think South Alabama's ever made the tournament, or at least not that I can remember. So give me the Jaguars. USA.
That's incredible analysis there, Matt. I want to go with the funny pick of Southern Miss, a team that lost 12 of their last 14 to end the season and then win tonight. But I don't know about you guys, my sweet king, Andre Curbelo, got kicked off the team like 2 weeks ago. Fly high, king. I know you're in paradise somewhere now. What a college career you had. They're not winning 7 games in 7 days. Give me James Madison. That could get really scary if they're put as a 15 seed and a certain team in East Lansing's a 2. That could get really scary really fast for some people. They wouldn't do that. Maybe. I don't know. Let's move on to the CAA. I believe this used to be the Colonial Athletic Conference. We had to change that for reasons. So now it's the Coastal Athletic Conference, or Athletic Association, I should say. Matt, we'll go to you first. Your thoughts on the CAA?
Well, first off, I could not talk about the CAA without talking about noted Michigan State season opener Monmouth. Unironically, I think this team could win 2 games in this tournament and make it to the semis, because Abdi Bashir is actually built for March. For those that don't know, he is their undersized starting point guard that just chucks threes. He is second in the nation, I believe, in 3-point attempts. He's first in 3-point makes. He's like 100 for 300 through 30 games. This guy, I don't know necessarily what that means in terms of efficiency. He's not completely shooting his teams out of games, but they're 12-19 on the year. They started the year 0-8, including their first win was against Seton Hall. Shout out to Big East, but they actually played pretty well down the stretch. They did not beat Towson in either meeting. They did play them close one time, so I don't think they can actually win this conference. But I went with Towson for the CAA. I mean, they haven't made the tournament in a really, really long time. I believe it's been like 30-something years, if I'm not mistaken. They are actually, I think they've never actually made it. I think they just haven't won the regular season title in a long time, I believe is what the stat is. This team plays super slow. They're strong defense. They beat JMU earlier this year, and in conference play, they were just better than everybody else. So yeah, give me the Towson Tigers.
Just to have our information correct, Towson last made the tournament 1991. So, I mean, it's still been a long time. Jay Walsh, go to you next. Your thoughts here on the Coastal Athletic Association.
So I took a bit of a reach here in this one. I am going with the 7th place Drexel Dragons to make a Cinderella run to the tournament here. That first of all, with Drexel, the thing I like about them is they have a great defense, 3rd in the Coastal in opponent points per game, 3rd in opponent field goal percentage, and 2nd in opponent 3-point percentage. They are very good defensively, which again, I like this time of year. They are playing very well. They've won 4 straight to end the season. They've held 6 straight opponents to under their season average points per game. They have a deep roster, 4 guys averaging over 9.5 points per game, 8 players over 10 minutes per game. And this part has nothing to do with basketball, but my cousin went to Drexel, so I feel like I have to take them. But I do genuinely like the team. So I'm rolling with the Dragons here to make a run.
I also took a gamble here. And Matt knows what's coming, what I'm about to say here. Northeastern Huskies, give them to me. I was at Matthews Arena this weekend for hockey, not basketball. What an arena. Real shame it's sinking into the ground and is going to have to be demolished. That's a real disappointment, but I watched this team play last week. It was the first time I watched them play this year. It was against North Carolina A&T. There was Rashad King. I believe he had an outstanding game. I believe he is going to go on a Kemba Walker type run with these Huskies. and they're going to somehow end up winning the CAA. Don't know how, but they're going to do it because I have faith in these Northeastern Huskies to make the tournament for the first time since 2019, I believe the banner said in Matthews. I'm not really sure. There were a lot of banners in that arena. So we'll move on from my, propaganda about Northeastern University. Let's move on to the Horizon League, where sadly we had to say goodbye to Doug Gottlieb's Green Bay Phoenix this evening. Jay Welsh, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on this Horizon League?
Yes, as I said to you guys before, nobody in their right mind could have seen that coming with Doug Gottlieb being forced out of the Horizon League tournament that early. Nobody could have seen that coming with their, what did they win? 3 games on the year?
4.
4. My apologies to Doug Gottlieb. I sold him short. So let me just double check because I honestly didn't really keep up with the games tonight. So I really hope that my pick didn't get knocked out. And I don't believe they did, but I am going with another reach here for the Horizon League. They did not. All right, cool. Sweet. I'm going with Northern Kentucky to take the Horizon League tournament. This is a team that's won 5 of their last 6 games, 4 in a row. Trey Robinson is one of the best players in the conference, 15.7 points per game. He's scored double figures in 8 straight games down the stretch. They've played top seed Robert Morris twice. They've lost to him twice, but they've had 2 very close losses to him. They lost by 5 the first go around, and then they lost the first go around, they lost in triple overtime. And then they lost to them the second go around by 5. And if they make it that far, it is hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. I like Northern Kentucky. I think that they're getting hot at the right time. Like I said, Trey Robinson, good player. I think he will get it. I think he'll get it done. I believe they're the Norsemen. Give me the Norsemen in the tournament.
Matt, we'll move on to you for your Horizon League thoughts.
Well, I am not reaching as far for this Horizon League. I'm not picking a day 1 Horizon League team to go on to win the conference, but I will say it will not be former noted college hockey program Robert Morris, unfortunately for them. Actually, fun fact, Nick, we've talked about outdoor college hockey games before on the show. Robert Morris in 2015 played at Fifth Third Field against Bowling Green.
Yes, I do remember that. Yes.
The only reason I know that is because Robert Morris stayed at the same hotel I did. I was in a hockey tournament in Toledo, and the championship game was also on Fifth Third, but Robert Morris stayed in our hotel. Anyways, give me Milwaukee this weekend, or this week, I guess. The Panthers do one thing and one thing really well, and that is hit the boards. They are one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the entire country. And the only reason I know this is whenever I go to look to see how good Michigan State is at offensive rebounding, the Milwaukee Panthers are always just right there. And they have not made the tournament in, I don't know how long they've been the last time. I know they had Patrick Baldwin a couple of years ago, who was supposed to be a lottery pick. I don't know what he's up to now. But I think they've played competitive with Robert Morris both times. They beat Cleveland State, I think, both times. I had accidentally clicked away from their schedule. Yes. No, they split with Cleveland State. But regardless, they beat Cleveland State one time. They were competitive in their non-conference against some solid teams. So give me Milwaukee here as a nice 3 seed. Because as we all know, the 1 seeds rarely actually win. I wonder what the actual percentage is, but it felt like last couple of years, the 1 seeds have not been as successful in their conference tournaments, even with the attempts from the woke left to try and force them into the tournament by these garbage conference tournament setups. So I'm going with Milwaukee, the Panthers, out of the Horizon League. Sorry, Oakland. I feel so bad for Greg Campy, but this is not their year.
Hey, you shouldn't need to feel bad for him. I mean, they had a run last year. That was good enough. I want to go I think you guys know what pick I want to do here. With the Vikings of Cleveland State, my grandfather's alma mater. They've looked so bad down the stretch. I believe they play Northern Kentucky up next. They may lose that one, honestly, just the way they've played. Give me Youngstown State. Give me the Penguins. They've never made a tournament. I believe they are also part of that club. I know they didn't really have the best of closes to the season either, but I have faith in these Penguins. I think they can figure it out, hopefully, and we'll see from there. Yeah, I want to go with Cleveland State. They haven't ended the season well. So we'll move on to the NEC, the Northeast Conference, a conference that has Chicago State in it, noted Northeast school, Chicago State. Matt, we'll go to you first. Your thoughts on the NEC this year?
This conference thinks Central Connecticut State has a cool logo. It's basically Lawrence Tech's, or I don't know who stole what from who, but either way, I'm going with Central Connecticut State because I don't know anything about any team in this conference, to be fairly blunt. I know LIU has a pretty cool student section. I keep seeing videos on TikTok about people going there trying to build the student section. But I believe these games are played on a neutral floor. No, they're probably actually at home court. So maybe LIU wins 1 or 2 games, but give me Central Connecticut. And the NEC needs to be abolished. This conference is a shell of what it once was.
Jay Walsh, we'll move to you next. Fun fact, the NEC, the lowest ranked conference in the KenPom for ranking of conference by net rating of teams expected to go 500 in conference play.
Solid. Yeah, I mean, this is really kind of a who's who of the nobodies. But in terms of who is actually the legit team or the most legit team here, it is Central Connecticut. I mean, they've won 12 games in a row. They're just absolutely red hot coming in. They're just kind of an all-around good team. They're not great at any particular thing, but they're just solid across the board. They're solid defensively, solid at 3-point shooting, solid rebounding. They just kind of do everything well. They're also deep as hell, 10 guys over 10 minutes per game, which, I mean, like I said, I'm very much a fan of that in tournament formats. So I don't see any other team here that is going to be capable of knocking off Central Connecticut. I see them dancing.
Give me the Blue Devils. I got really nothing else other than that. They've got the nation's longest winning streak, and that's good enough for me. Give me the Blue Devils. We'll move on to, I believe, the originator of the bowling ladder bracket, that is the WCC. And for the first time in, I don't know how long, probably 10 plus years, maybe 15, the WCC tournament will have games on a Sunday because BYU is no longer in this conference. So obviously BYU cannot play on Sundays due to religious reasons, and the WCC abided by that. So forever, they didn't play on Sundays of their conference tournament. So with that fun fact, Jay Walsh, is this Gonzaga's tournament to lose again? Gonzaga or St. Mary's, I should specify. Is this Gonzaga or St. Mary's tournament to lose once again?
Unfortunately, it is, just simply because, I mean, as you said, the WCC is like the poster child for this ridiculous format. When you think of the format, you think WCC tournament. It's just, it really is gross. But not to mention the fact that there are 2 legit teams in this conference and then everybody else. I'm going with Gonzaga here. I know they got swept by St. Mary's in the regular season, but I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. I just, and the predictive metrics for some reason just are absolutely in love with Gonzaga. MSU has won 5 top 25 games in a row, 5 quad 1 games in a row, and they're still behind Gonzaga in the net somehow. So I don't know. We have to trust the predictive metrics at some point, right? So I don't know. I'm rolling with the Zags here.
Matt, you also rolling with the Zags here?
I have 2 trains of thought. One, I think it's going to be Gonzaga because it's hard to lose to a team 3 times in a year, and Ken Palm loves them, and I love them. They're my preseason national champion pick, and they're not going to win the national championship. They arguably shouldn't even make this tournament. If they weren't the Gonzaga Bulldogs, they probably wouldn't be. But that leads me to my second train of thought. San Francisco or Santa Clara. I really like both those teams. All it takes is one. All it takes is even Oregon State could win this damn conference. Are we sure that it's going to be St. Mary's or Gonzaga? You know what? I'm not picking a winner, even though I picked Gonzaga for the Jerome. I'm picking the field. If it's St. Mary's or St. Mary's and Gonzaga or the field, I'm taking the field. I feel like this is the year that we have a bid stealer at the WC. Don't laugh. I am being serious. I think San Francisco, Santa Clara, and Oregon State are all real threats to actually win this conference. You don't shake your head. I'll see you when it wins their title game. We'll probably be recording a week from today while they're on their way. St. Mary's and Gonzaga might not. One of them will be playing next Tuesday. But hey, just saying, don't shake.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
This conference, can we confidently say St. Mary's is what, going to be an 8 seed in this tournament?
Probably.
And Gonzaga is what, a 9 seed because they're going to get Gonzaga. I don't think they're that unbeatable. This isn't a good St. Mary's team. This is like a still below average St. Mary's team. And Gonzaga, I still can't kind of comprehend how they're 9th or 8th in the Ken Palm right now. And Santa Clara beat them once already. Oregon State beat them once already. I'm just saying.
I don't know.
Yeah, but it's the format.
Okay, but look, like the Santa Clara and San Francisco just have to beat probably, especially San Francisco. Washington State will probably lose to Loyola or some shit. San Francisco needs to win one extra game against one of the actual crap teams in this conference. Like, it's not like I'm asking Wazoo or Oregon State is probably a bit of a stretch, but Santa Clara or San Francisco just need to win one extra game. I don't think that's that outlandish, and it has to happen at some point.
You say it has to happen, but it
doesn't have to happen.
But it does. But it does.
You know when it's going to happen? 2027, when both St. Mary's and Gonzaga are in the Pac-12.
All I'm saying, San Francisco beat Boise. They played close with Memphis and Clemson. They played close with Bradley, who one of you, I think it was Jay Walsh, picked to win the conference in the Missouri Valley. I'm simply pointing out that I am taking the field. I'm putting my foot down and I am taking the field. I'll place a futures bet on every single team in that conference outside the main 2.
You do you with your money.
But
it would be very much against my religion to go against St. Mary's here. My religion of Matthew Dellavedova. I can't bet against his alma mater. Give me the Gales to win this conference. They've had a very good year, a good year that's probably going to end with them losing in the first round to some SEC team, probably. There's about a 95% chance that's how it ends up in the bracket. It will be what it will be. Let's move on to the Patriot League. I don't know what to think of the Patriot League. This is one of the leagues every year. You think somebody else is going to come out of it, and then Colgate just wins it, and then they get blown out by 50 in the first round. Jay Walsh, we'll go to you first. Colgate, not the 1 seed this year. Does that open the door for somebody new to win this tournament?
Yes, I'm going with American partially because picking American in the Patriot League just seems like a no-brainer, but also because this is a really weird team. They don't really do anything great, and yet they win games. And part of that is they play an incredibly slow pace, and they just drag other teams down to their level. So I can see that playing out in this tournament and just dragging everybody down to their level where they live. And I'm rolling with American here. Not a whole lot else to say other than that.
Matt, your thoughts on the Patriot League?
I as much as I want to take Colgate to be that one aggressively below 500 team that still somehow finds their way into Dayton as in that 16 game on Tuesday evening, I'm going with Bucknell. They're a team that has been to the tournament semi recently. I don't know if they've been since they played MSU, and what was that, 2018? But still, that's semi recently, I think. And they've played a really tough non-conference. They played Kentucky, didn't get embarrassed. Played Gonzaga, got embarrassed a little bit. They did lose to Syracuse. They played Maryland, and since in the conference play, they split with American, but they blew out American at home by 22. And they've won 6 straight going to the conference tournament. I think they're playing really good basketball, and this is a conference that I don't feel too confidently enough in another team to sit here and say that Bucknell's going to lose. So,
well, as we lose Jay Walsh again, he is going to miss out on this. I don't fact check me on this because I have no idea if it's true. I'm just looking at KenPom right now, and I'm looking. Oh, we'll get Jay Walsh back in here so he can hear this. Jay Walsh, we're not fact checking this. I'm just saying that it's true and believing it. There's one team in the Patriot League that has at least once beat the top 5 seeds, or no, top 4 seeds, sorry, in this conference. That's the number 6 seed, the Army Black Knights. Give me Army. They've never made the tournament. They're one of those few left that have been around since the beginning in 1939 that have never made the tournament. 2025 is the year that ends. Give me Army. They're playing for Bobby Knight, who is dearly departed. Sure, why not? Give me the Black Knights. I got no other reasoning than that. Yeah, I got nothing. Let's move on to the Southland. Another ladder bracket here. Jay Walsh, start with you. This is McNeese's tournament to lose, and then lose by 50 in the first round, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's combined with the format, with the fact that McNeese has just absolutely dominated this conference the entire season. There's not really a whole lot to say here. I mean, they're dominant on both sides of the ball. I believe they're top points per game, and I believe top opponent points per game in the Southland Conference. They're the best rebounding team in the conference. They're deep as hell. 10 guys that are playing almost 15 minutes per game. Their 10th man in minutes per game is averaging 14 and a half minutes per game. So this is a team that is going to throw a million guys at you. McNeese. There's not much else to say.
Matt, you next. Is it McNeese? And that's it.
My biggest comment is, why on earth does the Southland play 20 conference games? Why? That seems completely unnecessary. First off, if you don't have more than, let's see, they have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. If you have 12 or less teams in your conference, you should not be playing more than 18 games. And I don't see the need to play 12 conference games. But anyways, McNeese is going to win this conference tournament because nobody can sniff them. I know they lost 1 game to Nichols, but I'm not worried about that. And yes, Nick, they will get blown out in the first round unless they play Kansas, Kentucky. Let's see who does. Oh yeah, like right now, Jerry Palm, the terrorist, has them playing Kentucky. So give me McNeese, I guess, because I don't see either one of those teams winning. And then they would play Marquette. So I guess McNeese is making the Sweet 16 in this scenario. But otherwise, no. If they get a Mississippi State, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Clemson, McNeese is going to get blown out. So,
yeah, Matt, you mentioned this conference has 12 teams. Only 8 teams make the tournament, which means we do not get to see a 2-18 in conference and 4-27 overall New Orleans team that is under federal investigation for gambling crimes. We don't get to see them in this tournament, sadly. Yeah,
I would like it known that the first ever time I was on the Green and White Report on the gambling corner, I took New Orleans. I don't even remember who they played that afternoon. I think they played Lamar, but I remember telling Trent Valley and Luke Sloan, friends of the program, to take New Orleans to Privateers that afternoon, and it ended up hitting. And so now I'm a New Orleans fan for life. But
well, hey, after this gambling scandal, Master P, he's taken over this team. He's the president of basketball operations. He's turning around the Privateers. What can we say? McNeese is the answer here as we lose Jay Walsh again. I think we're coming to the conclusion here with the Big Sky Starch Madness. That's right. It's Starch Madness, not Arch Madness, not March Madness. It's Starch Madness because we are having this take place in Boise, Idaho, or somewhere in Idaho. I think it's Boise, but Matt, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on Starch Madness?
Well, I am going chalk in this conference. I know it depends on, both teams went 15-3, but I am a Northern Colorado guy. In this scenario, they are clearly the best team in KenPom by, I think, like 30, almost 40 points. Actually, almost 50 points ahead of Montana. Really strong. They're the best offensive team and still a really strong defensive team. They don't allow teams to shoot the ball super well, and they just fill it up. I mean, this team gets to the free throw line. They make 40% of their threes. They knock down almost 60% of their twos. This team is as efficient as it gets. Our top 100 offense and our defense isn't terrible. And then looking at their schedule, they beat South Dakota State, who I'm a fan of. They did take Colorado to double overtime. They got blown out by a very good Texas Tech team. And they split with Montana, including a blowout win over Montana on the road. They did lose at home to the Grizzlies, but I really like the way they're playing right now. They were really strong, and they had 2 losses in the month of February. One of the best shooting teams in the country. Give me Northern Colorado. I forget what they're called. They're just the Bears.
Believe they're Bears or Golden Bears.
Never forget, they played MSU football in like 2010.
This is true. This is very true. I remember that game because wasn't that the game after Little Giants and D'Antonio didn't coach because he had a heart attack?
Let me confirm, but I think you are correct.
Okay. You confirm, Jay Walsh, your thoughts on Starch Madness.
I'm going with Montana here. They finished the season red hot based on Matt's thumbs up. I believe you are correct about Mark D'Antonio having a heart attack and skipping out on Northern Colorado. But anyway, back to the basketball. That's a crazy poll, by the way. Absolutely insane poll to just know that off rip.
Does anybody want to guess the final score?
Oh, dear Lord.
63-10.
I'll go 45-7.
What a poll, Mr. J. Walsh. 45-7, the final score.
Let's go, baby.
Nick, I believe that was also the year they played Ford Atlantic at Ford Field.
I was there. I can confirm that one.
In a 3-week stretch, they played Ford Atlantic at an NFL stadium. Their coach had a heart attack, and then they played Northern Colorado.
Also, wait, before we get fun fact, that was a Florida Atlantic home game.
Correct. They also lost to Alabama. They got bitch slapped by Alabama in the Capital One Bowl.
Yes.
That one I unfortunately remember. Anyway, back to the basketball. We're talking about Big Sky. I'm going with Montana. They were red hot down the stretch. They won 11 of their last 12 games. The one game that they lost was a 3-point overtime loss at Portland State. And one of those games was a road win over Northern Colorado. So they've proven that they can definitely hang with with Northern Colorado, even though they do have the KenPom advantage. Money Williams, by the way, absolutely sick name. Part of the reason I'm picking this team is just the dude's name Money. You can't pick against that. He's been a little inconsistent this year, but he has really stepped up in big games, especially in that game against North Colorado. He provided 19 points, efficient shooting. If he can kind of keep it up and step up when they need him to, there's no reason this team can't see the big dance. So I'm going with Montana.
I am going to take the Bears also of Northern Colorado. I like them. I know they've had their moments this season. Obviously, they had a 3-game stretch where they lost to Texas Tech, St. Thomas, and North Dakota State. Obviously, I wouldn't expect them to win Texas Tech, but the rest of them, you probably should have won those. But 3 conference losses the whole season, 1 to Idaho away, Montana at home, and Portland State away. Portland State, they may be a dark horse here. I believe they have both beat, obviously, Northern Colorado and Montana within the past month. I think they closed out the season well with 3 straight wins. They may be a dark horse here, but give me Northern Colorado to win the Big Sky and Starch Madness. Matt, did you have something to add on?
I just have one last thing to say about the Big Sky. Oh, as a whole, this conference always sends Montana or Montana State or Eastern Washington, and they always get bitch slapped, and I'm tired of it. So I want to see some new fresh blood. Maybe it is Northern Colorado that comes in and will probably also get slapped around. But I'm optimistic that they can maybe keep it competitive against like a Michigan Wolverines, which is who they're projected to play as of right now, according to Jerry Palm, in the 3-14 game. I would take Northern Colorado. Just saying. Partly because I think Michigan's a fraud based on, and I now have evidence to back up that statement. So other than me just being a hater of a Michigan State fan. But anyways, go Bears.
Fun fact, Northern Colorado has made 1 NCAA tournament game. It was 2011. They lost to San Diego State. They were the 15 seed. They lost 68-50. Better fun fact, that was vacated. Don't know why. It just says on Wikipedia that it was vacated by the NCAA. So shout out to them for what I'm assuming is gambling crimes or recruiting crimes.
So technically they have never made the NCAA tournament.
This is, yes, technically true. Oh, academic fraud and recruiting violations. Those are your reasons for vacating. So shout out.
Academic fraud at Northern Colorado is certainly something.
I would also agree with that. We'll quickly mention the MEAC and the America East. Their brackets aren't set yet, but they will rapidly be coming to a conclusion the next time we record. So we'll just start with the MEAC. Jay Walsh, we'll start with you. Your just overall thoughts on whoever comes out of this tournament that's taking place in Norfolk, Virginia.
Well, based on the fact that I have said multiple times throughout this show here today that 2 of the things that I look for are teams that head into the big dance red hot and teams that are very deep. The team that fits that description the best in the MEAC is South Carolina State. They've won 8 straight games, including beating top-seeded Norfolk State. They lost to them in overtime on the road first go around. So they got the revenge loss there. They're an incredibly deep team. They have 11 guys averaging over 10 minutes a game. I like South Carolina State here. Obviously, when you get to these smaller conferences, anything can happen, but I like South Carolina State.
Matt, we'll move on to you. Your thoughts for the MEAC.
I mean, there are 2 options in the MEAC. One is South Carolina State, who Jay Walsh took. I'm going with the other, Norfolk State, who seems like they make the tournament every single year. They beat JMU. They played close with Stanford. They played Baylor, and they did lose. They did get blown out by Baylor. They played close against Tennessee on New Year's. They beat High Point on the road. I mean, this is a relatively solid MEAC team, all things considered. I know they've lost 2 straight, and they have their season finale against Howard on Thursday. But I mean, that was a close loss to South Carolina State. Both games against South Carolina State were really close. So those are definitely 2 of the runaways. But I'll go Norfolk State just because they're full body of work. I think they get it done.
I will also be taking South Carolina State. I don't really have a reason. Just I'm taking them to take them. Matt, since we just talked about academic violations and, vacating, that makes me remember Alaska, Fairbanks, their one NCAA tournament appearance in 2010 for hockey got vacated because of academic ineligibility for players. So, yeah.
I would also like, if we're going to continue college hockey talk, Guy Godowski, the head coach at Penn State currently, I believe was the head coach of that Fairbanks team. He was not.
I believe
he had already left. He was at Princeton.
Oh,
so
that's disappointing.
He was a coach at Alaska Fairbanks in the CCHA.
Yes. Shout out the CCHA, the original one, not the fake one that's around these days. Shout out the Big Ten for killing it. You really did great on that one. I can start talking about how if certain schools in this state of Michigan added women's hockey, the Big Ten could do it again and kill some other conferences. But we won't get into that right now because we still got to talk about the America East. Matt, we'll start with you. Who's winning this conference, and why is it going to be Vermont for what seems to be the 50th straight year?
I don't think it's going to be Vermont this year. I believe in Bryant to get it done. I know they just lost to Vermont recently, but they also blew out the Catamounts early in January. Bryant kept it close, relatively close with St. John's. I guess that's really their only test they've had this year. I mean, my one claim is that somebody on TikTok said that Bryant could be a sneaky 15 seed to win, be a 2 seed, and this was back in mid-January. And so I just believe in the Bryant Bulldogs. I have no basis, and I hate Vermont. They play a boring brand of basketball. They are never competitive when they make the tournament. I know they're playing really good basketball as of late since they haven't lost. Their last loss was January 30th. They haven't lost the month of February. But early in the year, they were not very good. They lost even to bad mid-major schools, including a couple Ivies. They lost to Colgate. They lost to Dartmouth. So, yeah, give me the Bryant Bulldogs, fresh out of the NEC, ready to take over the America East.
Yes. Shout out Vermont women's hockey. Watched them this weekend. They were outshot. I believe it was around 50-16 against Boston University in the Hockey East quarterfinal game. They lost in overtime, 4-3. So shout out them. They kept it close, even though I didn't stay to see the whole game because I had another hockey game to get to. Jay Walsh, your thoughts on the America East?
I am rolling with the Catamounts here. I mean, Matt kind of took a lot of my talking points away. They're the hottest team in the league, won 8 straight, beat Bryant in that streak. So, I mean, they clearly can hang with the top team in the conference. And my number one point is just, as you said, Nick, it feels like Vermont is just inevitable in this tournament. John Becker is a great coach. I mean, he's probably one of the best kind of unheralded coaches in the country, just in terms of guys that don't really surface for coach of the year every year, but he just gets it done at Vermont just about every year. So I like the Catamounts here.
As we close out here, I obviously throughout this show, I mentioned it a lot. I got hockey on the mind. There are 3 teams in this conference that play in the Hockey East. Love the Hockey East. Shout out the Hockey East. And the Lou Lamoriello Trophy, which I learned about today. I'm just rambling on here. There is a team that has never made a tournament in this conference that has been around for most of the tournaments. That's the Maine Black Bears. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they do have a flag on that team. It's not Cooper flag, but it's his brother. It's going to 100% set up a rematch. Round 1, the 1 versus 16. Duke, Maine, give it to me. Give me the Black Bears. Orono, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Orono, Maine, going to be going crazy for the Black Bears, making the tournament for the first time ever. So given that, that's going to wrap it up, at least for part 1. Oh, Jay Walsh.
I just want to give a quick correction. Ace Flag is committed to play for Maine. I don't believe he is there yet, but he will be there next year.
Okay, so maybe when Cooper comes back for another year because he doesn't want to go to the Wizards, then that will set up the rematch next year.
Implying that the Wizards are going to win more than 15 games next year.
Also true. Yeah, they can keep playing that game for as long as possible. Shout out the Washington Wizards. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for part 1 of this. We'll be back next week. I know JDC hopefully will be back. Maybe we have a special guest next week, but I mean, we'll see. Who knows? Maybe it's no. I was going to say maybe it's Breslin again, but Matt, you won't be home, so never mind. I'm rambling on here. I will say though, if you took the over/under on which would be longer tonight, this show or the State of the Union, we are wrapping up, and the State of the Union still going strong. So, hey, no tariffs on gambling bets here. I can guarantee that. So let's wrap it up. For Matt, for Jay Walsh, for myself, that's going to wrap it up for the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. So thank you so much for watching. We will see you again next week. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe. Tell anybody you know about it. Tottenham Hotspur play at some point. I'm sure there will be a video about that. So yeah, make sure you tune in next week. Part 2 of this. You're going to get all the big boy names. You're going to get your Big East. You're going to get your Big Ten. You're going to get your SEC. Those are the only 3 that really matter. We'll see you again next week for another episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.